Have you ever met someone who's completely clueless but acts like they know everything? Or wondered why a crowd of people will just stand around watching someone who needs help? Today, we're diving into 5 mind-blowing psychology facts that explain the weird, wonderful, and sometimes disturbing ways humans think and behave. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at people, or yourself, the same way again. Let's get into it. It's why someone who's watched a few YouTube videos might genuinely think they can rewire their entire house, while an electrician with 20 years of experience approaches each job with caution and humility. This is a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge or competence in a specific area massively overestimate their own ability. It's named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, who published their groundbreaking research in 1999. And here's the wild paradox. The less you know, the more confident you tend to be. So how does this actually work? When someone lacks expertise in an area, they also lack the metacognitive ability, that's basically self-awareness, to recognize their own incompetence. They literally don't know what they don't know. Meanwhile, actual experts tend to underestimate their abilities because they're keenly aware of all the complexity and nuances involved in their field. You see this everywhere in real life. But here's the fascinating flip side. As people gain genuine expertise, they often experience what's called imposter syndrome, doubting their abilities despite mountains of evidence proving their competence. This creates a U-shaped confidence curve where confidence is highest at the very beginning and at mastery, with this valley of self-doubt in between. So if you're feeling like a fraud in your field, congratulations. You might actually know what you're doing. Now let's talk about something that completely revolutionized neuroscience: neuroplasticity, or your brain's superpower to rewire itself. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout your entire life. This discovery overturned the old belief that the adult brain is fixed and unchangeable, that you're basically stuck with what you've got. Here's the science. Every single time you learn something new, practice a skill, or even think a repeated thought, you're physically changing your brain's structure. There's this principle called Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you repeatedly use certain neural pathways, they become stronger and more efficient, like well-worn trails in a forest getting easier and easier to walk down. The practical implications are huge. This means you're not stuck with the brain you have right now. Someone who's struggled with anxiety can literally rewire their brain through therapy and mindfulness practices. Musicians' brains show enlarged areas responsible for finger dexterity. London taxi drivers have measurably larger hippocampi, that's the memory center, from memorizing thousands of streets. But here's the dark side. Neuroplasticity works both ways. Negative thought patterns, addictions, and trauma can also carve deep neural pathways. This is exactly why breaking bad habits feels so incredibly difficult. You're literally fighting against established brain wiring. The good news? With consistent effort and time, new healthier patterns can override the old ones. One more thing. While neuroplasticity is strongest in childhood when the brain is incredibly moldable, it continues throughout adulthood. The key is consistent, deliberate practice and novel experiences that challenge your brain. So yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Your brain is constantly ready to learn. Moving on to something a bit darker. The bystander effect, or why groups of people fail to help someone in need. The bystander effect is this disturbing social psychological phenomenon where individuals are actually less likely to help a victim when other people are present. And here's the kicker. The more bystanders there are, the less likely any single person is to intervene. This effect was famously studied after the tragic 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese in New York, where reportedly 38 witnesses heard her screams but didn't call the police. Now, later investigations revealed the story was more complex than initially reported. But this tragedy sparked decades of research into why people fail to act in emergencies. So what's going on psychologically? Several factors contribute. First, there's diffusion of responsibility. Everyone assumes someone else will help, so nobody does. Second, social influence. If others aren't reacting, maybe it's not actually an emergency. Third, evaluation apprehension. People fear being judged for helping incorrectly. And finally, pluralistic ignorance. Everyone's privately concerned but publicly calm, which just reinforces everyone else's inaction. But here's the good news. Research shows you can counter this effect. If you need help, directly address a specific person. You in the red shirt, call 911. Being aware of the phenomenon yourself makes you more likely to take action. And taking decisive action often triggers others to follow your lead. Training in emergency response also helps people override the bystander instinct. This effect extends way beyond physical emergencies too, to cyberbullying, workplace harassment, and social injustice. Understanding it helps explain why toxic behaviors can persist in plain sight, with everyone watching but nobody intervening. Let's talk about cognitive dissonance, or the mental discomfort of contradictory beliefs. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological stress you experience when you're holding two or more contradictory beliefs, values, or attitudes simultaneously, or when your behavior contradicts your beliefs. This theory was proposed by Leon Festinger in 1957, and it's one of psychology's most influential theories. So what does it actually feel like? It's that uncomfortable, almost nauseating mental tension when your actions don't match your values. A health-conscious person who smokes. Someone who values honesty but tells lies. An environmentalist who frequently flies. These all create internal conflict that the mind desperately wants to resolve. Here's how people typically reduce this dissonance. They change their beliefs. Smoking isn't that bad. They change their behavior, actually quitting. They add new beliefs, but smoking helps me manage stress. Or they minimize the importance. Everyone dies of something anyway. Unfortunately, changing beliefs is often way easier than changing behavior, which leads to a lot of rationalization. Festinger's original study was fascinating. He had people perform incredibly boring tasks, then paid them either $1 or $20 to lie to the next participant and say the tasks were interesting. Counterintuitively, the people paid only $1. Later reported actually finding the tasks more interesting than those paid $20. Why? They needed to justify their lie, but they didn't have the external justification of big money, so they convinced themselves it wasn't really a lie. The tasks genuinely were kind of interesting. This explains so much about human behavior. Why people double down on bad decisions. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Why cults use harsh initiation rituals. Severe initiations create dissonance that members resolve by convincing themselves the group must be incredibly valuable. And why people resist information that contradicts their worldview. It's literally psychologically painful. And finally, the mere exposure effect, or why familiarity breeds liking. The mere exposure effect, also called the familiarity principle, is a psychological phenomenon where people develop a preference for things simply because they're familiar with them. Repeated exposure to a stimulus increases our liking for it, even without conscious recognition. Robert Zionce's groundbreaking 1968 experiments demonstrated this beautifully. He showed participants nonsense words, Chinese characters to people who couldn't read Chinese, and random geometric shapes. The more times participants saw something, the more they liked it, even when they couldn't consciously remember seeing it before. This happens below the threshold of conscious awareness. Why does this work? From an evolutionary perspective, if something is familiar and hasn't harmed us, it's probably safe. Our brains use familiarity as a mental shortcut for safe and good. This is why new foods often taste better the second or third time you try them, and why that song you initially hated becomes catchy after hearing it on repeat. Marketers exploit this relentlessly. Brands spend billions on repetitive advertising not necessarily to inform you about their product, but to make it feel familiar and therefore preferable. Political campaigns work exactly the same way. Repeated exposure to a candidate's name increases favorability, regardless of their actual policies. This also has huge social applications. It explains why proximity predicts friendship and romance. We tend to like people we see regularly, whether that's classmates, coworkers, or neighbors. It's why arranged marriages can develop genuine affection over time, and why growing on someone is an actual phenomenon. But the effect does have limits. If your initial feelings are negative, repeated exposure can actually intensify your dislike. There's also a saturation point where too much exposure leads to boredom or annoyance. And it works best with neutral or mildly positive stimuli. So there you have it. 5 psychological principles that reveal something profound about human nature. From the confidence of the clueless to your brain's ability to rewire itself. From why crowds fail to act, to why we rationalize our contradictions, and why familiarity feels so good. These concepts show us that much of our behavior operates below conscious awareness, driven by evolutionary adaptations and cognitive shortcuts. Understanding these patterns doesn't just make us more knowledgeable, it makes us more self-aware, more empathetic, and better equipped to navigate this weird, wonderful world of human behavior. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one.